Hello everybody, welcome to Suffolk Business Life. My name's Craig Sennett and with me today is Kevin Ward. Hey Kevin, thanks for coming on the show.
Afternoon, Craig.
One of the parts of the show, as everybody knows, is all to do with running businesses locally, what having a business is like in the community. And Kevin I know quite well. Before we get on to what he does currently, can you tell us a little bit about your career, what you did previously?
Okay, I've had a slightly varied career for someone that's come from a banking world, which is what I've done most recently. Started off in the hotel industry, which I went into from school, so all about hospitality, looking after people, customer service.
See, I didn't know that, and I've known you for years.
There you go. Yeah. And went from there into the motor trade, which my father had always worked in. So I did that for a few years in various different roles, from salesman through to running a dealership.
Okay.
And then I did kind of fell into financial world. The financial advisor, IFA, and then ultimately into banking.
See, I didn't know you were an IFA at one point either.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And obviously you moved into banking eventually. I mean, do you find there are any differences from, for example, your lengthy career in automotive industry to banking? Are they a huge amount of similarities, or?
There's a lot more similarities than people would probably think, because at the end of the day, it's like most businesses, you have a customer, and you want to keep that customer happy and provide the relevant service or product to that customer. So there's synergies in that respect. Obviously, there's obviously lots of differences as well, because you're talking money and
products versus services, essentially. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But ultimately, it all comes down to relationship.
So what was it that drew you into banking? You know, was it a natural progression from the IFA time, or?
To a large extent. I mean, the motor trade I kind of fell into originally, and it was good, and I enjoyed it. And I sold lots of cars, which was great when I was selling, ran successful teams, which was good fun. But it's also long hours, weekend work. It was never the plan to go into that for the long term. My father really didn't want me to, having always worked in it. Yeah. And I liked the idea of getting involved on the financial side of things. At school I always wanted to be an accountant. They taught me out, but they said I'd get bored. Yeah. So I got a job offer to be a financial advisor from Lloyds TSB. On the basis I went in for a financial review, and it turned out to be a job interview.
Okay.
And I quite enjoyed it and got on well, but decided I wanted to be an independent financial advisor, which I did for a couple of years. And then unfortunately a redundancy meant I looked at other options, and one was going back in the motor trade through someone that headhunted me. Did that for a couple of years, got some great experience of running teams and a dealership, but then decided I liked the financial side of things more, and the hours, and targeted becoming a corporate banker.
I suppose obviously for a difference, I mean, when I've spoke with IFAs in the past, they tend to come and see me on my time rather than necessarily going, whereas obviously with the banking sector, you tend to go and see a banking individual on their time, sort of thing. You know, it's sort of more working hours, sort of thing. But you know, sort of 9 to 5, attending Monday to Friday, sort of thing. With obviously you've got your own business now, sort of Kevin Ward Limited. Essentially, what is it you do now then? I mean, how previously you worked, with your banking. What was it you did previously in banking versus what you do now? Similarities, changes?
There's some similarities. I was a relationship director when I left Barclays, and that meant I looked after a portfolio of customers, about 60 to 80, and I had a sector specialism with the motor trade, funnily enough.
Oh, right, yeah.
As well as law firms and one or two other bits and pieces. Yeah. So you looked after your portfolio of customers. It was very relationship focused. They were all at least 5 million turnover upwards, so they're fairly sizable corporates, and as a rule, the biggest was about 150 million turnover.
Okay, yeah.
And it was driving that relationship to make sure the customer was getting what they needed from the bank in respect to funding, the service levels, everything else, trying to come up with creative solutions as required, and then utilising the team resource that was there to give the customer what they needed, which that became more and more challenging, I have to say, as time has gone over the last few years, as you can appreciate.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What I'm now doing is kind of sitting on the other side of the fence. I suppose quite a few people have deemed me a gamekeeper turned poacher. Yeah. And I'm working with clients to help them with their bank relationship. What it isn't doing, it's not trying to get them, 0.5% off the rate they're getting. I mean, I'll do that if I can. But that isn't the focus. The focus is around improving the bank relationship, so it's a true partnership that's enabling that business to move forward with its plans to achieve its goals in the long term, which you're not going to do if you haven't got a good, strong bank relationship.
So would that be, I suppose, oversimplifying it, essentially taking what a business does on a day-to-day operating procedure and turning that into data in bank speak.
There's a strong element of that.
Yeah.
And there's an element of putting together, if there is a funding requirement, a pack to support the request to the bank, to make it actually really hard for the bank to say no.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's bearing in mind, I know and understand how the credit teams work, who are the true decision makers at the bank. So I target the managers at the banks and work with the good guys that really make the effort to understand their customers. But there's a real focus on making sure that you're giving the credit team what they need to make a positive decision.
I think one probably a very valid point there. I mean, you obviously see a lot, and I've seen a lot of business owners know their business really well, but they don't know what bits about their business a bank's going to want to know to make that lending justification. You know, it's kind of you sit there and talk about what you do for a business, but a bank wants to know certain key elements of data, financial turnover, profit loss, director security, you know, equity, all sorts of things like that, and being able to relate that in a way that's going to look favourably to a bank when they're looking to make a lending judgment.
Absolutely, yeah. And unfortunately, lots of accountants and other professionals, they've got a great grasp on the whole of how things need to be, but they don't really understand quite what it is that the bank is looking for as the lender.
I suppose obviously you've seen that side being, you know, and keep its own poacher sort of thing.
Yeah.
With sort of businesses, obviously, you know, I remember hearing on the car radio on the way up here that the economy has officially been in sort of recession again for 9 months now. Are you seeing a different type of problems with business owners, or good news with business owners, or are you seeing much the same that we saw 9 months ago?
It's a bit of a mix. I think what has happened is, in the best possible way, you've cleared out a lot of the rubbish.
The ones that were going to fail anyway, yeah.
That's right. And there's a strong element, obviously, in a family businesses, second or third generation, where they weren't really up to it, and they've been getting away with it for the last few years. Now it's just got to that point, the recession, double dip, if you like, has been going on for so long that actually that they couldn't sustain it any longer, and they've gone one way or another. So that's something that has changed, and the last 9 months have brought that to a head for quite a few businesses.
From an employment point of view, you get a similar thing, which is slightly more my background. You know, the first round of redundancies were people that companies did where people didn't want on, and as time's worn on, departments have had to close or people have had to be made redundant, and it pushed people onto the employment market that would not normally have been on it. They might have been somewhere 10, 15 years, just because the companies failed.
Which, because there's a great opportunity for those companies that have good quality management. And that's what I am seeing. It doesn't matter what sector it's in. It could be a sector that's traditionally seen as a challenging one, healthcare, for instance, and motor trade as well. But if you've got a good quality management team in place, and they'll be doing the right things, they'll be making the right plans, strategies, and they'll be working hard to implement them, adjust them when they need to, they're doing okay. I'm not saying they're doing well, but not in trouble. And they're able to therefore take opportunities such as, that guy, he's brilliant, he's on the market now, we want him, he'd be ideal for the future. So it's about surviving at the moment, I think. But it's also where you have got a good management team, you'll see that they're trying to get some foundations in place that will enable them to grow in a sensible way when things start to improve, which is actually when you see most businesses fall over in a recession.
Similar thing with my own business. I mean, I've most of our work has become overseas now because we do a lot of work in Dubai and sort of places like that, because the economy is that much stronger than it is compared to the London one at the moment. But you know, swings and roundabouts and stuff. I mean, are there any sectors you're seeing that are doing particularly well locally?
Probably not, to be honest. But equally, there aren't any sectors that I'm seeing doing really bad. And locally, we are quite a steady part of the country. You don't see dramatic highs or lows. The closest you'd get is Cambridge with the IT and everything else.
IT, bridge technologies, highway and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always, one of the things I've often said to people about sort of local business essentially is Suffolk is sheltered from the very highest of up times, but it's sheltered from the very worst of crashes. You know, it kind of has that smaller variance. Places Cambridge maybe like this, you know, sort of Suffolk a bit more, you know, it's one of the things I do notice about business locally is there's an awful lot of loyalty. When you get a customer, they will, you know, they're very loyal to you, and that's something. It can take longer for decisions to be made within businesses, you know, and sometimes they may want the window cleaner to have a say in whether they're going to spend 300 quid on something, I mean, hypothetically. But once you do land a customer, Suffolk has a tremendous loyalty within the business community.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, certainly.
And again, this kind of takes me on sort of jumping around my sort of schedule slightly. It takes me on to something I remember as a kid, my father going to Midland Bank. I mean, it shows how long ago it was, Midland Bank. Basically, he would go into the bank probably about once a week, for never really sure why, because I was a little kid sitting in the back of the car sort of thing. But the impression I had then was my dad had a good relationship with his bank manager. He knew his bank manager was. And I think personally and commercially that's possibly changed a little with our time. Would you say that's fair? Technology's changed it a bit?
I think it has. I mean, it depends what size of business you've got, firstly. Because if you're in a smaller business bracket, which for most of the banks now is sub 5 million turnover, the resource within the bank to look after the customers is limited.
Yeah.
So a startup business manager will probably have 800 customers.
Right. Okay.
So that's a challenge to speak to all of them. Yeah, of course. And you're not going to have a relationship, and it is more computer says yes or no. And as you move up, when you get sort of 3 to 5 million, they've probably got 100, 150 customers in a portfolio. So you're starting to get more to a relationship focus, but a lot of it is driven by product sales of that and things of that nature. So it's more a situation where banking is really a commodity at that level.
Yeah.
Then when you start moving into what we'd usually class as a corporate arena, you do get a relationship manager or director, and in theory, it is very much focused on the relationship with the customer, and that relationship should drive what products they need, and therefore that's what's supplied. And if the relationship is right, the customer hopefully is happy with what they're getting. The bank is going to make money from the services that they're supplying to that customer. Of late, I would probably suggest that with the bigger banks, certainly, it's been moving further away from that relationship. Some because there's more compliance, more challenges internally around the administration required, so therefore the managers haven't as much time to devote to their customers. But also the strategies of the banks have changed, and things aren't the same as they used to be in that respect.
I suppose in a way that's a good opportunity for you as with your business, is you can start to be, you only need to know 5 or 6 different banking managers as your inroads for funding and relationship building and stuff like that, and that as a service is, I suppose, in a way one of the things you offer to clients. They come to you because they want the interface that they're probably not getting at the moment. Yeah,
and the problem is the managers don't always have the time, and unfortunately in a lot of cases the inclination to work to understand the customer. And ultimately what went wrong with the economy, is certainly as far as the banking side of things is concerned, is there's 2 fundamentals to lending money. One is security, so that if it's a mortgage for your house is the security. The second is making sure that it's serviceable, i.e. that you can afford to repay the debt, which, again, putting in simple terms of a mortgage, is 3 times your salary. It's probably affordable. 10 times, it's not. Well, that is exactly how it works at all levels of lending. Now, the way you look at it, security is easy, obviously. You've either got it or you haven't. Serviceability, though, it's driven by financial information, which is fine. Anyone can produce the financials. You can get the accountant to do some wonderful forecasts, everything. But ultimately, it comes back to that management team again and their ability to deliver those financials. And what has unfortunately dropped off from a lot of the banks over the last few years, because things were quite easy, it was easy to lend money because everyone was making money. The management analysis side to lending money almost disappeared. A lot of the time, say, good management team.
I couldn't believe how easy it was for me to get the start-up funding for my business. I got it within 25 minutes of walking in the door. It literally they sort of said, can you put together a business plan? And I said, well, I've actually got one, and they were quite stunned that I actually had one. And they said, all right, okay, and I said, do you get many people come in and ask for lending without one? And banking manager I was talking to went, yeah, we do. We get a lot of people. And I was like, all right. So, but I was quite surprised later that day the funds were put into my account. I mean, in 3 years we paid it off. We paid it off 2 years earlier, it took over 5 years, cleared it off after 3. But I was surprised how easy it was to get that money, because I must have been 28, 29, something like that. Sort of